My name is Ryan Miller, and the man I trusted the most was the one quietly destroying my life. If you have ever trusted someone so deeply that you did not even think to check their hands, then you need to hear this story all the way to the end, because I learned something the hard way. Sometimes the person who calls you brother, the person who eats at your table, the person who says, "Relax, I've got this," is not protecting you. Sometimes they are counting the days until they can take everything. I built my business from nothing. No rich family, no fancy degree, no investors waiting in line. Just me, a small office, a borrowed desk, and a dream that kept me awake at night. I started with one laptop, one phone, and 1,000 small sacrifices. I worked late. I skipped meals. I answered calls at midnight. I drove to meetings with tired eyes and a hopeful heart. Every dollar I made went right back into the business. I was not just building a company. I was building my future. And back then, I thought I had found the one person who would never let me fall. His name was Daniel. Daniel was the kind of guy people liked right away. Calm voice, clean shirt, firm handshake, always smiling like he had no bad thoughts in his head. He knew how to say the right things. He could make anyone feel safe. We met years ago through a mutual friend. At first, we were just business acquaintances, then partners, then close friends. At least, that is what I thought. Daniel was the one who said, "Ryan, you should not do everything alone," he said. "You are carrying too much." He said, "Let me help. Let me take care of the financial side. You are good at growing the business. I am good at managing it." Those words sounded like relief. And when you are tired, relief sounds like love. So I trusted him. I trusted him with the bank access. I trusted him with the accounts. I trusted him with the payroll. I trusted him with client payments, vendor payments, tax filing, and all the boring things I hated doing. He said he was only helping me. He said he was protecting me from stress. He said, "Ryan, you focus on the work. I'll handle the numbers." And I believed him. That was my mistake. At first, everything looked fine. The business was growing. Slowly, but steadily. We had more clients, more work, more money coming in. Daniel was always there with a confident smile, saying things like, "We are doing great," and "This is just the beginning." I remember nights when I would sit in the office after everyone left, looking at the lights from the street outside, feeling proud. I thought, maybe for once in my life, I had found a real partner, someone loyal, someone honest, someone who would stand beside me when life got hard. I was wrong, so wrong. The first sign was small, almost too small to notice. One afternoon, I checked one of our vendor statements and saw a charge that did not make sense. It was not huge, just a few $100s. I asked Daniel about it. He laughed and said, "Oh, that? A bookkeeping error. I already fixed it." His voice was calm. His face did not change. And because I trusted him, I let it go. A week later, there was another strange charge. Then another. Then a payment delay. Then a client deposit that had not been logged correctly. Each time I asked, Daniel had an answer ready. Simple answers. Smooth answers. Answers that made me feel stupid for asking. "Relax, Ryan. You are overthinking it. I already took care of it. You need to stop worrying about every little thing." And I did what many good people do. I believed the person who sounded confident. I ignored the small warning signs because I wanted to believe in the friendship more than I wanted to face the truth. That is how betrayal grows. Not with one giant lie, with dozens of tiny ones. Then, one evening, something changed. I was at home going through old receipts when I noticed a payment transferred from the business account to a private account I did not recognize. It was not a small transfer. It was $50,000. I stared at the screen. My first thought was that it had to be a mistake. Maybe I was reading it wrong. Maybe there was some internal reason. Maybe it was part of a payment system. I called Daniel immediately. He answered on the second ring. "Hey, man," he said, sounding relaxed. I asked him about the transfer. There was a silence on the line. Not long enough for most people to notice, but long enough for me. Then he said, "Oh, that. We had to move funds quickly for an urgent business expense. I was going to explain tomorrow." "Why was it sent to a personal account?" I asked. He chuckled lightly, like I was being dramatic. "Temporary holding account. Don't make this bigger than it is." And somehow, in that moment, I felt my stomach tighten. But still, I did not want to believe it, because believing it would mean facing something ugly, and I had already built my life around trusting him. Over the next few weeks, I started checking more carefully. I told myself I was just being responsible. I did not tell Daniel I was watching. I looked at statements. I looked at invoices. I looked at old email chains. I looked at transaction dates. At first, the pattern was hard to see. Then, it became impossible to ignore. Money was disappearing. Not once. Not twice. Again and again. Payments that should have gone to vendors were redirected. Client deposits were moved around. Accounting records were changed. Some expenses were fake. Some were inflated. Some were written off in strange ways that made no sense. And all of it pointed in the same direction. Daniel. I remember sitting alone in my office, staring at the papers on my desk, feeling the air get heavier and heavier. My mouth went dry. My hands started shaking. I opened another folder, then another, then another. And the truth became clear in a way I will never forget. My life savings were gone. Not missing. Not delayed. Gone. The money I had built over years of sleepless nights, hard labor, and sacrifice had been drained out of the business like someone had opened a wound and let it bleed. I did not move for a long time. I just sat there, quiet, cold, looking at the numbers, trying to understand how a man could smile in your face while stealing the foundation under your feet. I wanted to explode. I wanted to call him and scream. I wanted to break something. I wanted to drag the truth into the open and expose him right there. But something in me said no, because anger is loud, and loud people make mistakes. If Daniel was guilty, then I could not afford to be emotional. I had to be smart. I had to be calm. I had to be better than him. So I did not confront him that night. I did not tell him I knew. I did not warn him. I did something else. I started collecting evidence. First, I copied everything. Every statement, every invoice, every email, every transfer record, every agreement, every message. I backed it all up. Then I compared dates. I built a timeline. I traced one payment after another until the shape of the theft became visible. The more I looked, the worse it became. Daniel had not just been taking money. He had been planning. He had created a pattern so he could hide the theft inside the business routine. He used fake vendor names. He set up shadow accounts. He changed record labels. He moved payments just enough to avoid immediate attention. He had even used my own signature on some documents. That was the moment I stopped feeling hurt and started feeling something colder. Not hatred, clarity. Because now I understood. This was not a misunderstanding. This was not a mistake. This was a betrayal with paperwork. And paperwork, unlike lies, can be proven. I hired a forensic accountant. Quietly, carefully. I did not hire someone flashy. I hired someone who knew how to read the bones of a business and tell where they had been broken. I gave them access to everything I had copied. I told them, I need the truth. No guessing, no assumptions, just facts. They worked for days. Then they worked longer. And when they called me back, their voice was serious. They told me the numbers were bad. Very bad. Daniel had not only taken money from the business, he had also transferred personal funds tied to my own savings. He had moved money into accounts linked to a shell company. He had forged internal approvals. He had created a paper trail that looked legal at a glance, but collapsed under real inspection. They told me something else, too. He had been slowly preparing to push me out. I sat there in silence as the words hit me. My friend, my partner, the man I had eaten lunch with, laughed with, and defended in front of others. He had not just stolen from me. He had been building a future where I disappeared. That night, I did not sleep. I sat in the dark and replayed every conversation, every smile, every brother, every trust me, every time he told me not to worry. And I finally saw what I had been too loyal to notice. He had never respected my trust. He had only used it. The next morning, I acted normal. That was important. I smiled. I answered calls. I walked into the office like nothing had changed. Daniel was there, leaning back in his chair, looking calm as ever. He looked at me and said, "Morning, man. You good?" And for 1 second, I almost laughed. Because there he was. The same voice. The same face. The same fake peace. But now I knew the truth behind it. I looked at him and said, "Yeah, I'm good." And that was the day his empire started to fall. I did not accuse him. Not yet. Instead, I let him keep talking. I let him keep moving. I let him keep believing I was still blind. Because the best revenge is not rage. The best revenge is timing. I met with my attorney. I laid out everything. The transfers. The forged records. The shell company. The suspicious payments. The altered approvals. The accountant's findings. The timeline. Every piece of proof was placed carefully in legal order. Not as a weapon of emotion. As a weapon of truth. Then I contacted the bank. I froze what could be frozen. I filed the right reports. I documented everything. I secured backup copies in multiple places. I made sure no one could say I acted out of panic. No one could say I made it up. No one could say it was just a misunderstanding between partners. Because this time, I was not only angry, I was prepared. Daniel noticed the change before he understood it. At first, he thought I was just quieter than usual. Then he thought I was stressed. Then he thought I was backing down. He started acting more confident around the office, as if he already owned the place. That made me almost feel sorry for him. Almost. Because he had no idea that every move he made was being logged. Every email was being archived. Every false story he told was being cross-checked. And every lie he used to cover the last lie was helping expose the next one. The most powerful thing about a liar is that they always think they are in control. But lies are heavy. They leave fingerprints. And the longer they carry them, the easier they are to trace. 1 week later, Daniel called a meeting with a few senior employees. He wanted to restructure operations. That was his phrase. Restructure. A nice word for taking control. He stood at the front of the room, talking about efficiency, growth, and future leadership. He even mentioned that some people needed to step aside for the good of the company. I knew exactly who he meant. Me. He thought he was about to remove me from my own business in front of my own team. He thought I was already beaten. He thought I was still the same trusting fool who would nod and smile. But I was not that man anymore. I let him finish. Then I stood up. The room went silent. Daniel looked at me with that same confident smile. He said, "Ryan, maybe this is a conversation for later." I said, "No, this is the perfect time." Then I opened the folder I had brought, and everything changed. I did not raise my voice. I did not insult him. I did not shout. I simply began placing documents on the table, one by one. Bank records, transfer logs, forensic findings, email chains, contract copies, signature analysis, shell account details, forged approval records, Each page was another nail. Daniel's expression started to shift. First, confusion. Then annoyance. Then concern. Then fear. I looked at him and said, "You've been moving money for months." He tried to interrupt. I kept going. "You used my name." He tried to laugh. I did not stop. "You created fake records to hide the transfers." Now the room was completely still. "You took my personal savings and moved them through accounts that belonged to your side company." Daniel's face had gone pale. He finally said, "Ryan, this is not what it looks like." I looked him right in the eye. "It looks exactly like theft." No one spoke. The employees looked at the papers, then at Daniel, then back at me. I could feel the truth settling into the room like dust after an explosion. And then I said the final thing he never expected. I already reported it. Daniel froze. He stared at me like he had just heard the floor crack beneath him. I continued, "My attorney has the full file. The bank has been contacted. The records are secured. The forensic report is complete, and every dollar you moved has been traced." His mouth opened, but nothing came out. For the first time, Daniel looked small, not powerful, not clever, not in control, just small. I still did not yell. That was the part that destroyed him most. Because a calm man with proof is far more dangerous than an angry man with no plan. The next days were brutal for him. His accounts were reviewed. His records were challenged. His excuses fell apart one by one. The shell company he thought was hidden was exposed. The fake vendor trail collapsed. The forged approvals could not stand up in court. The money trail was too clear, too clean, too complete. He tried to call in favors. He tried to blame staff. He tried to say the system failed. He even tried to say, I had approved everything verbally. But the evidence did not care about his performance. Evidence does not get nervous. Evidence does not lie. Evidence sits there patiently until the truth catches up. Within days, clients began asking questions. Then the board stepped in. Then the attorneys moved. Then the bank shut down access. Then the public pieces started falling into place. The company that Daniel had tried to build his name on began to crack, then break, then collapse. And right in front of him, the empire he thought he had stolen from me started turning to dust. The hardest part was not the money. It was the people. Because betrayal does not just take your savings. It also takes your trust in the world. It makes you look at every friendly face twice. It makes you wonder who else is pretending. It makes you ask whether kindness was ever real. I felt all of that. I felt angry. I felt ashamed for not seeing it sooner. I felt sick thinking about how long I had defended him. But I also felt something stronger than pain. I felt resolved, because I was not going to let his betrayal define the rest of my life. I was going to finish this the right way. The legal way. The clean way. The way he never expected. So when everything was done, when the evidence had spoken, when the files were filed, when the truth could no longer be buried, I looked at Daniel one last time. He was sitting there, staring at the table, unable to meet my eyes. He had nothing left to say. No charm, no excuse, no smile, just silence. And I told him, very calmly, "You thought I was weak because I trusted you. But trust is not weakness. It just means I believed in you more than you deserved." He did not answer. I stood up. "I gave you access to my life," I said. "You used it to steal from me, but you made one mistake. You forgot that the man you were lying to was the same man who built everything from nothing." Then I picked up my folder and walked out. No shouting, no drama, no victory dance. Just a quiet ending for a man who had spent too long living inside a lie. After that, I had to rebuild. That part took time. More time than I wanted. Some days I felt strong. Some days I felt empty. Some days I woke up feeling like I had won something and lost something at the same time. But slowly, brick by brick, I rebuilt. I kept the parts of the business that were still clean. I cut the toxic weight loose. I brought in people I could actually trust. I changed the systems. I checked the records myself. I learned every part of the business Daniel had kept hidden from me. And this time, I did not hand over my future to someone just because they smiled at me. Because now I know the truth. The loudest person in the room is not always the strongest. The calmest person in the room is not always the safest. And the person who says, "Trust me," the most, is often the one who should be watched the closest. Daniel lost everything. His name, his position, his reputation, his access, his control. The thing he had built on lies could not survive the truth. And when it fell hard. As for me, I did not just survive him. I outlasted him. I gathered the evidence. I stayed calm. I let the law do what anger never could. And in the end, the man who tried to steal my life savings watched his own empire collapse right in front of him. So, if there is one thing I want you to remember from my story, it is this. Be kind, be loyal, but never be blind. Because betrayal does not always look evil at first. Sometimes it looks helpful. Sometimes it sounds friendly. Sometimes it sits across from you and calls you brother. And when that happens, the only way to win is not to lose your mind. It is to keep your head, to collect the truth, to protect your future, and to let justice speak louder than rage. My name is Ryan Miller, and this is how I learned that the person you trust most can become the person you must prove everything against.